Hey, what's up? It's Brian G, the EVOG, coming to you from the cockpit of Valkyrie, our 2023 Rivian R1T. Today I'm filled with a great sense of gratitude. It's Sunday. It's an absolutely beautiful day, 77 degrees here in Silver Spring, Maryland. I'm especially grateful to all of you who've taken the time to not only watch the videos I've published, but also to comment and especially to subscribe. And I say that today because yesterday I passed the milestone of 1,000 YouTube subscribers. When I started this channel in January, I had the goal of getting to 1,000 subscribers by the end of this year. And again, because of how you guys have leaned in, I revised that goal to get to 1,000 subscribers by tax day, and we were able to do that 2 days early, getting there on April 13th. So again, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it, and I'm humbled, and I feel challenged to make sure that providing content that is worthy of your subscriptions and ongoing commentary on those videos. So for my first video after 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to republish, call it a remix if you will, our March podcast, EVOG podcast. Um, that podcast was just under an hour and 15 minutes long that Adam and I put together. And in my interest of really consolidating the time that it takes to watch, I took out way more information than I should have. There are so many good gems included in this podcast that I want to make sure we share it with you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and republish this podcast, and hopefully you'll take the time to watch it, because Adam especially shares some really interesting gems of information that are definitely worth listening to, watching, and perhaps driving more commentary around. When I published this a couple weeks ago, there were several people who actually said, hey, what's up with the editing? It seems like there's a lot of stuff that you cut out. So I wanted to make that right and make sure that I shared the entirety of that conversation, because it was a good one. It was on some level emotionally charged, but I think you get to see two different perspectives between Adam and myself. So I'll go ahead and publish that now, and hopefully you guys enjoy. Let us know down in the comments, and thank you all again for taking the time to subscribe. Welcome back to the monthly EVOG podcast. I'm Brian G, the EVOG, and this is episode 3 for the month of March 2024. Joining me again is my friend Adam from Adam's Everything EV. And man, so much has happened in, I'd say, the last month or so in the EV world. But Fisker continues to be the headliner, and it's for all the wrong reasons. Since our last podcast in February, Fisker's top 5, I guess, would be, let me see, I wrote them down here. They secured an additional $150 million in expensive funding from their note holder, but then they failed to file the 10K on time and didn't meet the closing conditions for funding. They defaulted on their interest payment on that loan and announced the OEM partnership was off, whether that was Nissan or somebody else. And of course, they've been delisted from the New York Stock Exchange. They brought in 2 firms to consult with them on restructuring options. They laid off staff, halted manufacturing with Magna, and drastically cut prices on the 23 models this past week, which we'll come back to. And I guess that was done to drive additional cash flow. But as I said, we'll come back to the fire sale, if you will. But number 5 on my list, Adam, involves you and the fact that you took delivery in the last month. In fact, right before, I believe, the going concern, right? The day before. So why don't we start there? How are you doing?
I'm okay. I want the community to know that, well, first thing I want to say is, Brian, excellent job summarizing the past month. That is a chunk of things that just happened. And I always appreciate your succinct delivery. That was an excellent job. As far as myself, I want the community to know that I am in no dire straits at all. The first thing I said to my mom when I took delivery of this car was, I'm going to review it and I'm going to get rid of it. And obviously the second part of that is out. But otherwise, I didn't intend on this being a permanent ownership thing for me. Because of the videos I make, I want the community to know that I had experience with the car. So when I talk about it, there's a basis there. So I can say, I have owned it. I've lived with it. These are the realities. As far as, what all's happened and how I'm doing. Yeah, I mean, that was not, Bill said gut punch, but for me, I thought it was more of a face punch that I actually, I took delivery and I had a great feeling and an extremely pumped up attitude for exactly one day. But otherwise, I'm doing fine because my job with this is observe and report from an objective perspective. And as easy as that might sound, I know we've had some retirements in the community. I don't know if we want to name names or not, totally up to you, but some of the sources of Fisker information have just given up. And so I really feel like it's my job to make sure that this community has the resources, the information, and the evidence they need to follow to be able to make decisions about what to do next, how things are being affected, how other people are affected. I just did Easter dinner, and of course I told them this is my 2023 Edsel. You remember Edsel?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So this is I have a show car. I can't do anything else with it. And this is my point of view. Obviously some people bought this as their main car and I have empathy there, but this is my 2023 Edsel. I'm going to take it to places. I'm going to go get ice cream once a week. Went to visit my family for Easter, which is a great thing to do in your Fisker Ocean. You're not in a hurry. You're driving slow. You understand that if something happens, that all kinds of things could be bad about trying to solve those problems. But we have more to talk about with that coming forward. I know you've got some of that in the notes for the podcast. I don't want to go out of order here, but I'm doing fine. And my job will continue to be observe and report for the sake of the community.
Yeah, I was pretty disappointed to see Fiskerati essentially shut the site down. You're not on the forums, but I am. And one of the things that was mentioned on the forum, one of the forums that I'm in, is that our community is going to need each other more than ever moving forward, right? To your point, we're not really in a position to get rid of these cars. I mean, I couldn't sell my car or trade it in today, even if I wanted to. I don't have the title, which we'll come back to, right? But we need each other now more than ever, right? So that was disappointing to see Sean and team make that decision. And I think it creates an opportunity, right, for people like yourself, myself, and others that are going to continue to talk about and live with the Fisker Ocean. I saw that you were pretty prolific over the course of the last week plus with the number of videos, right? I counted at least 5, and that doesn't count the shorts, right? Of which there were, 2, 3, or more. And, for me, I'm kind of numb, right, at this point. And I had several thoughts about going out there and putting something out on video, right? I did one of those stream of consciousness videos not that long ago at a sunset, and it seemed to resonate with folks. But as we were on that roller coaster over the course of the last week plus, I felt like it was important for me to just kind of take it in, right? Not overreact, and kind of put my thoughts together. And one of the thoughts that I had, and I can kind of see it, I don't know if you agree with this or not, in terms of the content that you were providing and others, and what I saw in the forum, it's like we're all going through the 5 stages of grief, right? That's kind of what it felt like. And those 5 stages are denial, right? And I think the denial aspect of it has to do with what I call affirmation versus information, right? We spend so much time looking for affirmation versus information, right? Affirmation of what we already believe to be the case. But when we start to look at the information that's out there, particularly around Fisker and some of the, mismanagement, if you will, that introduces another stage of grief, which is anger, right? Where when you look at that information, I thought you did a great job of that with the Glassdoor video, where you just read some of the comments there, right? And that's when I found myself getting angry at some of the decisions, some of the it felt like incompetence, right? That led to some anger. And then I saw myself and others in the community in the bargaining phase of grief, where it's like, please, can I get 2.0, right, before they, cease to exist, close the doors? Can I get an extra key fob? Can we get the package items for Fisker Ocean One owners that supposedly is in deferred revenue on their books, right? So that's the bargaining phase of things. And then there's a sense of depression where you're feeling, to some degree, helpless, right? Feeling duped by the Fiskers. In mine, and in many cases, you don't have your title or registration like we talked about. So, resale value or trade-in value, it almost doesn't matter because there's nothing we can do. We're kind of stuck in suspended animation until we get the title. And then once you have it, are we really going to trade it in, or are we really going to look to sell it and take that big of a loss? That becomes the question. And then, of course, long term, when you start to look beyond the horizon, what's going to happen in terms of service and support? So again, just a ton of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And I think ultimately, as you work through all of that, you get to the last stage of grief, which is acceptance, right? We're going to accept our reality. And as I mentioned in one of my last videos, I'm just going to enjoy this vehicle for as long as I possibly can. I did ultimately get version 2.0 on Thursday, I think it was, last week, right? So I got part 1, and I'm assuming early next week I will get part 2. But, now I can see the solar sky statistics kind of in real time. And we went down to DC on Saturday. There was a cherry blossom kite flying event down there. The weather was spectacular. We were in California mode, driving around DC. We were absolutely loving the Fisker Ocean on Saturday. Hill hold works perfectly, right? It works extremely well. And if I don't want it, and I want to get that electric manual transmission feeling where, I can feather the throttle, right, and get some roll back and forth. I was just really enjoying a day with my family and the Fisker Ocean down there in DC. So I'm in a place of acceptance. I saw some affirmation as it relates to that in your last video, where someone made mention of the fact that all automakers, well, I shouldn't call it a fact because we don't know it to be a fact, right? That all automakers have to have a slush fund set aside to address warranty, repairs, and have spare parts, right, on hand to address customer needs, even if they go bankrupt. I'm not sure how valid that is, particularly with a Chapter 7, where you liquidate and you go away. Perhaps with Chapter 11, that opportunity remains there. So I'm remaining hopeful that that's something that could come to fruition. And, if and when I do get the title, I just don't think there'll be enough value coming back. So I ultimately feel like the vehicle will be worth more to me to ultimately keep it. So I don't want to speak for you, but as I was looking at your content, and there was a lot of it, it was cathartic, and it felt like, yeah, we're working our way through these phases of grief. And I don't know if you felt like, you got some cathartic benefit out of doing the content that you did over the course of this week. It certainly looked that way with Bill on Monday.
Yeah. Basically, I appreciate your point of view, and I think a lot of the folks in the community are doing the same thing. You're going to sit back, you're going to take it in, try to work your way through those stages at whatever pace you need. Everybody's different. This is what a counselor would tell you, but I do feel like it's true. But my job was observe and report. I wanted there to be some place for the community to go every single day, or at least, I think I almost hit every single day, something to look at that was real and published, and, let people make a decision about what to do. As far as the bankruptcy, I'm right with you. Chapter 7, there's no chance. I mean, you're looking at, think about all those parts that Fisker chose not to use from Magna. Every one of those parts is never going to exist anywhere ever, unless they tear apart existing Oceans. So like the vent thing, so I'm sure the entire assembly for the doorknobs and the key fob, all that stuff, it's just going to be what it is, and those are going to be DIY solutions by experts that are within the community and willing to share their knowledge. But I'm hoping Chapter 11 happens, because that's when the protections kick in. That's when the first decision they make is for the owners. But if they do some off the books, under the table sale to some other company, we're all going to suffer. And if it goes to Chapter 7, which I had a very long conversation with my family about this today, what is there to sell? If they liquidate their inventory, what do they have to sell? My opinion is they have the IP on those cheap alternative parts, and literally that's it. There's nothing to sell. And what is that IP worth? I guess if maybe like a Test Bros could pick that up, and say, hey, we'll build those parts. Maybe they get the schematics or whatever and build those parts. But what else is there? Fisker, they don't have a building. They don't have.
So this is where one of the things that made Fisker attractive to a lot of us, right? We felt like there were some things that they were doing in this landscape that were unique, that were different, and we felt would give them an opportunity to be successful as a new startup.
Sure.
Right? Some of that, and a big chunk of that, is the asset light model, where you don't have as capital intensive a process, right? Where you're building factories, learning how to build vehicles. We're talking, hundreds of millions of dollars at that point, if not in the billions to do that. Instead, you're focusing on your core competency of design for automobiles, which is what Henrik Fisker is legendary for, is automobile design, right? He's great at that. So in this model, we felt like you get to focus on that while you outsource to Magna to do what they do well, which is build quality vehicles, right? So that's the upside of it, but it becomes a double-edged sword in that when you're in a predicament like Fisker is in right now, and you're looking at bankruptcy, you're looking at buyout, you're looking at getting an investor, well, they tend to invest in assets. And what are the assets that Fisker has to offer? And that's where it gets tricky, right? Because we don't know where Fisker's IP around design stops and Magna begins, right? So I think that makes it really, really difficult for Fisker, to climb out of this. The patient is very much on life support. Some might even say patient is in a coma, but they're not dead yet.
Yeah,
it could be a matter of time.
If I can interject right there, I have to do this regularly just to make sure that people who don't watch every video that you and I are in, make sure that they hear it. The employees are not the problem. Shouts to the employees. Make sure you treat these people well. They treat us well. And they are few and far between, and all of them are worried, but they have always done a good job. And any of their shortcomings are basically a result of this management process. I want to interject there and let you know that. Also,
no, I'm really glad you interjected. Sorry.
Go ahead.
The point. Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's a really important point, right? For many of us, both of us on this call included, right? The Fisker Ocean's not our only daily driver, right? We have the first world problem of that being a secondary vehicle within our garage. And the folks at Fisker, I've had at least 2 or 3 encounters over the course of the last, I'd say, week and a half. Let's call it 2 weeks, where when I think about, and we just talked about the patient being in the coma, right? I'm going to call this signs of life, if you will. And it starts with what you just interjected with there, Adam, and I'm really glad that you did, because that's one of the signs of life that I see, right? I had a situation, not last weekend, but the weekend before, where I took my daughter down into DC, right? We went down to the wharf, plugged in the parking garage, come back to the car, hour and a half later, can't get the plug to disengage. So I called the Fisker support line. I was on with an individual in about 3.5 minutes. And in another 2 minutes or so, he had helped me resolve the issue and, get me on my way. And we had a conversation about, because I asked him, hey, how's everything going? And the positivity, and the first thing he said was, look, we're all working hard. He didn't put it in context of me or himself. He said, we're working hard every day to take care of our customers, right? We're trying to control what we can control, and that's what we can control. So that was really good to hear, that the level of positivity coming from them. I talked to my service tech late last week and got the same thing. It was like, man, I'm here for the duration. As long as they pay me, I will continue to help our customers, because I love what I do. I love engaging with Fisker customers. I love helping them. I love being able to go out, travel to see, because it's an interesting group of customers that we have. He's really enjoying working at Fisker. So these are folks that took a chance just as we did, right? And they're in a very tough spot every day, dealing with all of the negativity and the reality of where the company is. So that's one of the primary signs of life that I'm seeing. The employee sentiment is huge, right? I've also seen, parts being delivered to my house. I got new mud flaps delivered. My tech came out and installed that stuff. We're seeing people get their vents replaced on a daily basis. So service and support is still very active. Now, you got a ton of people calling in to the support line, so it's harder to get through over the course of the last week or so. but I had to open a ticket just yesterday because I'm seeing some odd driving behavior since installing part 1 of the 2.0.
I don't
where
want to rain on your parade with 2.0, but don't take any more long trips until you get that second one. If you have that braking event and there's people in your car, they'll never get in it again.
Yeah, so I did not have the braking event. What I'm seeing is loss of throttle response. And I meant to forward you the message that I sent to support, right? So, and it's intermittent. It doesn't happen every time. I went to play golf today, and both ways I had no issues. Car drove beautifully. But the day before, when we were in DC, most of that drive was fine, but we had multiple times where when I was applying the throttle, and I tried this in all 3 drive modes, when I was applying the throttle, I wasn't getting the response, right? So a couple of times there, I ended up putting my flashers on so people behind me understood that I was dealing with something, right? And I would have the throttle all the way down to the floor, and it would literally tick up 1 mile per hour very, very slowly versus the linear response that we're used to with EVs. So I opened up a ticket. I tried to call. I was on hold for a long time because, again, everybody's calling in trying to bargain, right, that stage of grief and get as much as they can done before, the company is no more, which is the perception right now. So I sent an email in, got a response immediately with my ticket number, right? I could have reached out to my service tech, but I recognized that it's Easter weekend. I'm not going to go there, right? I'll wait until Monday and I'll reach out and, we'll get this figured out, because I figured from talking to you and others that once I get part 2, that issue is likely going to go away, right? So I'm not terribly concerned about it. And like I said, it's intermittent.
It's the scariest limbo you're ever going to be in with an automobile. It's part 1 of 2.0. That's all I can tell you. I recommend to you in the community, if you have one half of 2.0, be careful. But you must continue to drive, because the battery will only charge to a nominal state of charge while you're resting it. And that nominal state of charge is not high enough to get 2.0 installed, the second part, or the third part for our Extreme and Ocean One. Continue to drive the car. If you want all of 2.0, you must drive your car. That is straight from a Fisker tech. That is not Adam made something up. I didn't read it in a forum. I don't read forums. But I'm going to tell you right now, you must drive your Ocean, because there is a level of charge that you get to in your 12-volt battery that cannot be achieved from the trickle charge from the large battery. Just to share the information. I mean, there's a lot of information that I get and I try to sort through and I try to catalog for everyone, some of which will just cause frustration and problems and more headaches for the Fisker service team, because these are known issues, obviously, by them. And some things need to be delivered immediately. But what I need to deliver to you, if you are, because I know a lot of 2.0s went out. Bill got 2.0 as well, probably same time you did. And just drive it. Don't drive it far, but continue to drive it. The reason I was able to get 2.0 instantly after I had my second braking event was because I was driving it and I continued to drive it. I went to Kroger, and while I was in Kroger, they pushed it. So I don't know how else to communicate that, but
I'm thinking that push is a manual exercise, right? So it wasn't going to be pushed over the weekend anyway, right? So when I sent in the service request, that's what I said. Look, contact me ASAP and or push part 2, because I think this will likely be resolved with part 2, and we'll see. I mean, we drove, it was at least an hour to get into DC from where we are. And then on the way out, we kind of took our time. It was a beautiful day, so we did some sightseeing. It was not an issue when I was on the DC Beltway. But it's not something that, to your point, that I'm going to want to take, a long Cape Cod or New York road trip with until I get 2.0, right, and rebuild the trust in the vehicle.
If you have a contact for a Fisker service representative and they're a technician and you feel they're knowledgeable and you have a contact for them, skip the ticket. Say, listen, it's time. I need my 2.0. I need the second part. I'm having problems. Be as specific as you can. But they go to their next level up, and it goes through to the powers that be, and you get your 2.0. But once again, you must have driven it in order to charge it to high enough to get it. Or now you're dealing with a 12-volt failure, which has been reported as well for 2.0 and was part of the reason it was so long for so many people to get after that first initial rollout. So just to let you know.
All right, so that's enough about 2.0. Yeah, I'm sure we'll be doing more videos on 2.0.
Sure.
There are some other things that I really, really like. I'm not sure if this was in 2.0, but one of the things that I noticed was that when under navigation, we've always been able to add a waypoint, add a stop, right? And they added at some point, I think with 1.11, the ability to search for what you want to add in terms of a waypoint. Well, now you can add, I tried this out, doing some testing this weekend. I was able to add 11 waypoints. And in doing so, the vehicle actually calculated 2 stops, right? Because I was just playing around with this thing, traveling to, if I'm a traveling salesperson in the region here, and I've got 11 appointments, can it do it? Because Rivian, for example, caps that at 10.
Okay.
And with Fisker, I was able to go past 10 and add 11. I'm not sure how far past 11 it will go, but it was kind of nice to see that the route planning worked that well. So there's some other things that I'm starting to realize about 2.0 that is really good. But before we get too long on this podcast, I do want to go back quickly, Adam, to the fire sale, if you will.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. I've had a lot of feedback. The reason I posted these videos as well is because sometimes some people, I think, use my comments section as a forum. And as far as the information I have, there are maybe a dozen sports total that were for sale in this fire sale. Next, all of them are gone. If you see a video that says the Ocean Sport is now 25, the Ocean Sport disappeared instantly. Oh, and finally, it is hard to steal a car. It is easy to steal cash. If you want all of my thoughts, those are them.
Yeah, why don't you tell us how you really feel about it?
I'm just trying to break it down. We're limited on time, so.
Well, one of the things that, and I filed this under Signs of Life as well, right? That in Fisker's post, right? I don't think I saw it on Facebook. I think I had to go to Instagram and LinkedIn to see it. But in that post, I saw one of the signs of life in terms of they finally talked about being committed to customers. They talked about 2.0 is rolling out and they're going to get it to every single Ocean customer. And they also talked about continuing to provide mobile service, which was validated when I talked to our mobile service tech, right? So there were some signs of life there. But certainly if you can find an extreme or an ultra at those price points, it's at least something to think about. Now, I wouldn't recommend anyone buy any of these vehicles at any price, given the uncertainty of support or service.
The Ioniq 6 is $239 a month on a lease right now. That's all. That's my rebuttal.
Well, yeah, and we know that they're likely to be around, right?
Yeah,
so there are other options out there.
If you want a 2023 Edsel, check out the Ocean.
Yeah, and this will be my last point on the fire sale. If you're going to do that, one of the things that you have to do is give customers, dealers, give the public a reason to trust you, right? And that is my going concern with Fisker right now. There's a crisis of trust. And one of the quotes that I'll put out there is that trust is built with consistency and transparency. And we've not seen either of those things from Fisker ever. I've made other videos where I've said pointedly, right, they're not as transparent as they could or should be. And there's like no consistency at all from this company. So in the absence of that, it makes it really tough, right? We talked about competence being a concern as to why we perhaps can't trust this organization. And you can point to examples around the 10K filings or lack thereof. We can look at some of the things that have been reported most recently here about lost payments, right? Not being able to find customer payments, having to have them, and I guess, what was it, Motor Trend? What was the auto outlet that bought an Ultra, paid for it, and then
They lost the payment.
was never, yeah, they lost it. They had to resend the payment for that vehicle, right? These things go directly towards competence. The fact that I'm coming up on 6 months of ownership and still don't have registration and tags and so on.
That's exactly what I feel the exact same way. And that's why I'm thinking chapter 7 instead of 11. And I know I mentioned 11 in the past, but any amount of asset that Fisker has is completely and totally overblown or undervalued compared to their goodwill, which is so negative. I feel like you can't save it. Goodwill used to be an asset you could put on the books, but people were abusing it, in international accounting standards. So it's no longer an asset on the books, but it's still a real thing. And Fisker's is way negative and probably impossible to solve at this point. So I agree 100%.
Yeah, so I guess we'll have to see. I don't know. I guess I'm a little bit more of an optimist than you are at this point, Adam. I think because for Henrik Fisker, this is his last shot, right? He's never going to have an opportunity to be a CEO ever again, right? If Fisker can't find a way to keep moving forward, this is the end of it for him.
Correct.
He becomes an employee at that point. Maybe somebody will bring him in as chief designer or to work as a part of a design team, but that's about it.
It right? Could be just like his last company, to where he runs away and then says that the bankruptcy happened after he left as some kind of excuse. I appreciate the optimism. I really do. And because people need it. And I'm not here. I am here to be this person. I'm here to say, I'm the owner, but I have a pessimistic point of view, because even if you are an optimist, you need to understand that there's another side to it, because there are many of those people out there that I really still want to believe in this company. And a lot of people watch these videos and they're trying to look to us for why. Why? Well, two things in my opinion. Fisker, my teachers, I have a finance degree. My teachers always said, and they said it like a mantra, like we had to recite it, like the Pledge of Allegiance, like, what are we here to do? Increase shareholder wealth. Well, that's all they cared about, to the point of failure, in my opinion. And secondly, Fisker is what you get when you vote against something instead of for something. It's just like this election. No matter who you vote for, you have an extremely negative opinion attached to the other side. I would never vote for that. I want anything but that. And when you vote for anything but Tesla, and you believe that you can counteract it or fix it or find something else that's the same but not, this is what you get. I voted against something instead of for something. And here we are.
Yeah, that's a great point. But I want to make sure people don't get the wrong impression. I'm not suggesting that anybody believes in this company. I don't believe in the company, to be clear. And I don't recommend that you go out and buy this vehicle. If I had to do this all over again, I wouldn't do it. knowing what I know now, when you know better, you do better. Yeah, so I guess we'll see. As I said, trust is one of those things that's earned with consistency and with transparency. The other thing I would say about trust is that it's built in drops, but lost in buckets, right? So they're going to have to do a lot of little things over a period of time in order for me to trust them again, right? And that's just how trust works. It's one of those things that you earn with consistency, and they just have not done that. So as I said, to be clear, I'm not saying that you should be believing in this company at this point. So that's the reality of where we're at. So for our fellow Fisker Ocean owners out there, I would say it's always darkest before the dawn, but it's also sometimes darkest before the lights completely shut down, right? And you go out of business. So
Sure.
I would say that folks, yeah, go ahead.
No, and on the other side of that, like, I'm not telling people that, I drive your Fisker off a cliff or, abandon everything immediately. But at the same time, we need to approach this with an aura of skepticism towards the company. The cars are actually pretty good. I still like the car, and I still enjoy when I get to drive it when it's not doing something. By the way, tried hyper mode today, just as a final thing. I had my cousin in the car.
In your Sport.
In my Sport, I switched it to hyper mode. He said, punch it. I said, sure, let's do it. And I got a warning that said, unplug all devices immediately. Power overload, unplug all devices immediately. And I was like, welcome to the Fisker. So he got a kick out of that. But,
that is funny.
Yeah.
Hopefully you got that on camera, at least for a short.
No. It's just, it's easy to reproduce. It actually has happened to me every time I've punched it. Every time that accelerator pedal has seen the floor, I get this message. So, I think that was the third time. The other two were in earth mode, but I get the power overload, unplug all devices immediately.
That is funny. One of the things that my wife said as we were on that trip down into DC was, and this was when we were having the issue with the throttle response, right? She said, every time you get in this car, you should have the camera rolling, right? Because you never know what's going to happen. And my response to her was, 90% plus of the time when I get in the car, it's boring, which is as it should be, right? There's no faults. There's no stuff going on. I'm just enjoying the ride. So hopefully with part 2, this is not going to be an issue. But getting back to our Fisker Ocean One owners, you got to enjoy your ride, I think, is what you've got to do from an acceptance stage of grief, where hopefully most of us are right now. Enjoy the ride. If you can't, open a ticket, as I did yesterday. And mobile service techs, as we talked about earlier, they are the very best representation of what we all thought that Fisker would be, right? So give them an opportunity to make it right and get your vehicle back to a place where you can get back to enjoying it. So
yeah, and I definitely agree. I think that you should also understand that this is a time of difficulty for basically everyone in Fisker. They're losing employees, and there's an increase in concern, which is not great for volume. And with that in mind, opening a ticket is good, but if you have any additional steps you can take, if you have another point of contact, if you know somebody you can talk to, if you know another owner, find out what they did to get an appointment. Try to, and I know, like, I shouldn't say this about anything, service should just work, but try to jump the line, because it's a long line right now. If there's any, I don't want to say, I'm not saying, hey, you should definitely, inundate them with messages, but you can jump the line. You can work harder to get an appointment.
Well,
If you're okay with
it's about jumping the line, right? It's about getting the response that you need to address the concern that you have, right?
correct.
Right now, as we talked about, the phone line is overwhelmed with all of the calls coming in, and there's probably been some folks laid off that were in those roles, right?
And the chat is down. Also,
exactly. Well, I thought it was just because it was the weekend. I wasn't sure if it was okay. So, like you said, use all of the avenues that you have to get access to support. What I found to be really, really effective is to email the support line, because it goes into their CRM, it auto-generates a ticket, and that ticket, at least in our case here in the DMV, typically gets sent to our local techs, who will then reach back out, schedule an appointment, or give you a call to resolve whatever the issue is. So I don't know, Adam. It feels like there was a lot of well, I guess it's the reality of where Fisker is, right? There's going to be some negativity, but I want to close us out here with some positive news, right? We've talked about the last month or so in the EV world, and all we've talked about to this point is Fisker. But since our last podcast in February, we've had the Superchargers open up to Ford, and then a week later to Rivian, right? Which is huge. These are like seminal moments, in my opinion, as we make this transition. I'm also seeing that Tesla has opened up a lot more of those magic dock stations that support all CCS cars. So road tripping, and the timing's great, right? Because we're coming up, we've got spring break, we've got summer vacations as people are traveling. And our last trip, which was just, a little over a week ago, was a lot more seamless because we had a couple of Tesla Supercharger options there with magic docks as we wait on our adapters. So it's not all negativity in this EV transition. We also saw Rivian announce the R2, R3, R3X. Problem is, it's not for 2 years. And in talking to one of the Fisker owners, I know that he put in a deposit for an R2 because he figures, I'm just going to drive my Fisker Ocean 1 for a couple of years, and then I will just go ahead and trade it in on an R2 after enjoying it for a couple of years. So that's one of those potentially great options to replace the Fisker Ocean that I know people are looking at, assuming there isn't a long-term prospect for support and service for this vehicle. So
I'm curious.
Yeah.
I'm curious. The R2, they said the base price was like what, $50K?
45.
All right. Well, they said the Ocean was 30,000 for 2 years, and then they said it was 39,000. And that's the only number you ever heard. It starts at this. It starts at this. What do you think that first model is going to cost? What's your ballpark? I got a number. What's your number?
So my number is $69,995. I think it's going to be $70K.
If it's built in North America and it qualifies for the tax credit, I think you're right. And they'll be $7,500 off that.
Yeah, I don't think it can go higher than 75. And I think ideally they're going to try to slot it around 70K, right? But I don't see it going beyond 75, because then why would I buy that instead of the R1S? So
right.
That's my thought on it.
Okay. Well, I just so people know, and the expectation is there. I am, and maybe it's just that I've put too many reservations down between 2020 and 2023, and I'm just absolutely sick of we're going to release it at this price. I mean, I put $100 on the Blazer EV, and I had every intention of owning that vehicle. every intention. But it's just like the Ocean. I wanted the cheap one. I wanted the base model because I am paying. My thing is I want a vehicle and a battery. I'm paying for the battery. All of that other stuff is just pure depreciation, in my opinion. But that battery is what I'm buying. And they were like, okay, well, it's a $60,000 battery, not a $40,000 battery. And it's just pure disappointment. So don't think that you're getting a $45,000 R1 or R2 until 2027 or 2028, because these launch models are going to be $70K. I agree.
So this car isn't going to come out for 2 years. And we're talking about the midsize SUV class here, which is, other than pickups, the top segment within the US and North America, I think. So I just don't see 2 years from now them being able to do that. That's the reality of where we are today. But as prices continue to come down, and we see what's happening, you mentioned the Hyundai Ioniq 6 earlier, right? There are other examples of manufacturers continuing to reduce prices. We saw what happened with the Mustang Mach-E, I guess, last month or in January, where they slashed prices, anywhere from 8 to 12K, right? So 2 years from now, I think you're going to have to be in that sweet spot of around 50K in order to be super competitive in that space. Yes, there'll be a few people that pay a bit more of a premium, but with a midsize SUV, and remember, this is a high volume vehicle for Rivian, right? So they're going to have to be, I think, more competitive in terms of the pricing on this vehicle, given the number of options that people will have. It's not like the R1S, where you can count on like 3 fingers the number of 3-row SUV EVs, right? This is a little bit different. So being 2 years out, I think they're going to have to get as close as possible to that starting price. And I think if they can, and I think that's part of why they're going to start building it in Illinois versus waiting for the Georgia plant, they're going to try to leverage some economies of scale so that they can, A, hit that price, and B, hopefully get it out on time, if not a little bit sooner.
Sure. Well, at 45,000 or even let's say 55, because that's probably more realistic. But at 55,000, it's a really good offering. I mean, it has, I would consider it a Model Y Ocean hybrid, to where, yes, you get the glass that goes down in the back and you get the, let's say, intriguing looks, but you get like closer to a Model Y type of price point and, potential reliability. I know Rivian struggled initially with reliability, but they've made a lot of leaps and bounds as far as reliability since then. So, yeah, I mean, I love that. My mom today had like an emotional reaction when she was talking about the R3. You should get an R3. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, in 3 years, it'll be something I can think about. But, we're not going to, Rivian needed that because, we all know that Rivian's a beautiful company, but they're struggling financially, basically almost as bad as Fisker. They're not there, but they're close. They have been struggling as well. And Rivian's nowhere near disappearing, but at the same time, Rivian needed that. Oh, by the way, here's one more thing. They needed it to generate some positive press, let's say.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I'd say it's 50-50 they even build it.
Well, it's also the type of thing, and we know why they do this, right? The reason that Fisker had, their product roadmap day months ago, right? It's not necessarily for the public, right? It's great to get, the public excited, get some pre-orders in there, but it's really to drive investment in the company, right?
Shareholder wealth.
Absolutely. And to some
Shareholder
extent,
wealth.
it does that. And they're going to look to see, well, how did the public respond when you did this one more thing and one more thing after that? And there's no question the response has been overwhelmingly positive. but they've got to stay focused on that R2, get it out
Oh,
close
and
to that
final
price
note
point.
on that.
Yeah.
I agree. Final, and I am so sorry to interrupt. Final point on that. Guess who was the first person to review the R2? MKBHD.
MKBHD, yeah, of course.
Yeah, please believe it. Fisker, you messed up. He
Well,
doesn't get access at all unless it's first. That's the only access he's happy with. He will destroy you if you don't do that.
well, I would say that he is way in the back of the line in terms of what is destroying Fisker, right?
Oh, no.
They just need to look, in the C-suite.
I have zero. I put zero merit towards MKBHD doing anything negative. All he did was open the door. There was a door that was closed, and he opened it. That's it. By the way, guys, take a look. He let 4 million people know that if you didn't know this car was a disaster, at least from the company perspective, it's a disaster. The car is okay, and I think that sentiment, if you objectively watch his review, that was the sentiment. The car's okay. He's like, but the decisions that the company made were so poor that all of us suffer. Maybe I'm wrong. That was just, if I had to take something away. And, next time, give it to him first.
Yeah, he released that video at a time when a lot of us were perhaps in denial and looking for affirmation, right? So the information that he provided wasn't affirming, and so you got the response that you got, right?
The timing was perfection.
Oh, could not have done it at a more perfect time. It was kind of
for
cool
performance
to see,
on his video.
Yeah, the other thing that we just saw recently was he reviewed the VinFast, which I know many of us were thinking about VinFast when he said the Ocean was the worst vehicle he'd ever reviewed. And I thought it was a good comparison, but only to a point, right? VinFast has very, very deep pockets, right? So they're not going anywhere. And they'll have the opportunity to improve their software and refine the vehicle, right?
Yeah,
assuming they can get folks to trust them.
Did you happen to watch the out of spec take delivery of their VinFast?
Oh yeah.
If I'm VinFast, I don't give them the car. I would let him bash me just forever. Because that's the difference between VinFast and Fisker. They can afford to hold back and say, you know what? No, nobody gets a car. We thought they're done, but they're not. We got to finish them. Imagine if they started delivering the Ocean right now. Imagine the very first Oceans anybody saw were full 2.0. Right? Brake hold, waypoints. It would be different. Because these loss of power, like I don't even know what people went through. The Ocean 1, like let's say the August, September Ocean 1 and before. It was just catastrophic. It's just their voices weren't loud enough. We didn't believe them. There weren't enough of them. And we didn't believe them. Because those stories were out there. And, once again, it was
definitely something that I saw a lot in the forums. And even though I didn't have a lot of those experiences, I was really concerned that people who were having those experiences oftentimes were being shouted down by the fanboys, right? The Fisker fanboys, which, that there's deafening silence from them right now, right? So, the information, as we've talked about, has been out there, but we weren't looking for information at that time. So that's the reality of where we're at.
And in full disclosure, there's things that I wanted to say during that entire period. And I did. I said all of them in one video. And that the problems video, I'm sure you remember.
Oh, yeah.
I lost a lot of fans when I made that video. But I didn't make any more because at least I delivered the information. People are having huge problems. They're complaining to NHTSA. It's a bad deal. But there are so many people in the Fisker community that I respect that are investors. That, I mean, it's like, I'm going to let it play out. I'm going to observe and report, but I'm not going to get into, don't buy this car. I'm not going to say buy this car. In fact, I have a review of, let me ask you this. I have an Ioniq 5 versus Fisker Ocean Sport. It's the base model Ioniq 5 and the Fisker Ocean Sport comparison video. Do I even release that? I mean, what do I do with that now? Should I just compare them? And, obviously you don't want to buy one, and the other one is perfectly adequate. I don't, but I'm just curious as to what I should do with that video, because it's just sitting on my desk complete. And I don't know whether to go in and do more commentary on the Ocean or just let people know, hey, the Ioniq 5 is just as good for the money.
Here's the thing, and we haven't really talked about this to this point. Rumors of Fisker's complete demise, I think, are a little exaggerated for where we are today. And the reason I say that, Adam, is on the earnings call, one of the things that we heard was that coming into Q1, Fisker had a 9-digit sum of money on their balance sheet. I want to say it was about $135 million, right? Now, we know that about 47 million of that is deferred revenue, right? So you take that away and we're talking about, I don't know, call it 90 million, right? That they have. We know that they stopped production, so they're not having to apply capital for Magna. We know that they didn't make the interest payment on their loan, right? So they've still have a significant amount of cash. We also just saw the fire sale to clear out U.S. inventory, right? That's going to bring in some cash. And I believe Classic Fisker got a pretty significant number of vehicles that they took delivery of, ultimately paid for, right? And I'm pretty sure their 30-day out was not exercised since they're still in existence. So with the cost constraints, right, that they're applying to operate a lot more efficiently, that cash, I don't know, maybe it buys them 2 months, a month, 2 months, and anything can happen, right? The Ocean is not the issue. The Ocean is a solid vehicle. I personally absolutely was loving this thing, am loving it over the course of this weekend especially. And as it gets warmer and I'm able to put it into California mode and get out there, and as the software gets better with 2.0 and so on, and we know that 3.0 is active in Europe right now with at least some owners, right, testing 3.0. So there's still software development that's taking place, right? There's an opportunity for our vehicles to even get better than what they are now. And many of us absolutely love driving these vehicles. So anything can happen, right? We don't know. It may just be turn out the lights situation, or it might be something that prolongs it. It might be a takeover. It might be a sale. As you can see, there's still a little bit of optimism that I'm carrying here. So we'll see what happens. And anything can happen. So I'm going to let it play out, and I'm going to continue to enjoy the ride with this vehicle once I get part 2 of version 2.0.
I know I probably come off as horribly negative during this podcast, but you're right. We don't know what's going to happen. It's just that I refuse to believe anything anyone says. First of all, nobody knows what the actual money is, right? That's the whole problem. because they
including
refuse to
Fisker.
show us. They refuse to show us, which is why I continue to reiterate that cash is easier to steal than vehicles. Because what do you do if you're Henrik Fisker, you probably know more than us. What do you do? I mean, take the money and run. There is no more shareholder wealth. Like, you're going to do whatever you can to benefit personally. Is it bad that I think that? I mean, that's an objective point of view, removing myself from the situation.
There's 100% chance you're not the only one that feels that way, right? You're reflecting part of our community, part of the investor community, right? I would say that Fisker is still a public company, right? Well, are they? They've been delisted.
See, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, there is no more. There's no. If I'm somebody in that position, I'm going to divert everything to the appearance of continuing to exist. I'm going to make disappear everything that I'm allowed to take. It's just like, and let me just apply in an estate sale, right? Everything that makes it to the estate sale is going to be conglomerated and shared throughout the inheritance. But whatever you get your hands on before it's sold is yours to keep. I mean,
well,
we assuming
that. Yeah, go ahead and finish the point.
No, I mean, assuming that you don't get caught.
Well, that's where I'm going. That's where I'm going, right? Is there's oversight that's out there, I like to believe, right? And that was going to be my point with them being a public company. And I'm not sure that they're still a public company, given that they've been delisted. They're no longer a public company, right? But I would like to think that there's enough oversight out there that if you do try to take the money and run, then there's an opportunity for prosecution, right? So maybe the worst that happens isn't that, Henrik doesn't get to be CEO and start another company. Maybe the worst that happens at that point is we get to see him in an orange jumpsuit or something along those lines, right? So
in my opinion, the worst thing that can happen is that they're still in charge.
That's been my concern from, I wouldn't say
you're one of the first people that
a while I've been saying, right?
You're one of the first people that said that
OEM happened, right?
You're one of the first people I heard say that.
Them to go execute, right? So, as I said, there is a crisis of trust there, and with so many things, whether it's relationships, whether it's company customer, company investor, right? When you don't trust a person or an entity, you might as well turn out the lights at that point, right? So that's the reality of where Fisker is. There's a crisis of trust.
Yeah.
So
I had the first day I drove it, the very first day I got the car, I got in the car and I did a range test and I talked to people and they were excited to hear about it and I was excited to talk about it, right? But after that, I'm going to be honest with you, I'm embarrassed to drive that vehicle around.
See, I don't share that. I feel, number one, I love driving this vehicle, right? The throttle response issue.
I don't. I have a superior automobile. I have an automobile that is superior in every way, except looks.
I do too.
Okay.
Right. The R1T is the best EV we've ever owned, right? But when I love driving the Fisker Ocean. When I park it and walk away, I'm always looking back at it, and I think, damn, that is a great looking vehicle. When I'm in it, I'm comfortable, right? I absolutely enjoy it. So that's the reality of my experience with it. And it's only getting better. Now, when I look out past the horizon in terms of longer term prospects and support and service, that's when, I get a little sad. I start to get back into the depression phase, right? But again, I'm going to try and focus on what I can control, which is enjoying that vehicle for as long as I can. And then once I can't, hopefully by then I will have been in receipt of my tags and title, right? And I'll be able to, move on from it at that point. But for now, I'm enjoying it. And that's what I would recommend others do.
I appreciate you sharing that sentiment. I also recommend others do the same. If you get enjoyment out of your Fisker Ocean, go enjoy it. I bought mine as a business decision. It was a part of what I do. This, my channel, this
and
medium.
Against my recommendation.
Oh, there is nobody around me physically, on the phone, anywhere, that told me I should have done what I did. Nobody. Probably part of the embarrassment. And you got several months of enjoyment out of it. I did not. 24 hours. So, yeah. I mean, and I don't, the fire sale and the price doesn't bother me, because I know that no matter what, I know how rare the trim that I have is. I know how rare it is. That rarity cannot, and maybe I'm a Corvette owner. Well, I'm the only one with the yellow with the blue rims and the crazy exhaust. Maybe I'm one of those, but my car's rare. Now that doesn't matter for 25 years, but it's the only thing that keeps me from just wanting to drive it off a cliff, honestly. Like, oh, and final thing, the key fob. I do not press the key fob. Do you still press the button on your? I don't press it ever. I refuse to press the button on the key fob.
Yeah, I absolutely do. Right. One of the things that I was looking forward to in version 2.0, because I've seen other owners, other folks on the forums talk about the fact that now the key fob works from across the parking lot, right? You don't have to be within 10 feet of the vehicle. That has not been my experience with part 1. It looks like in part 2 of 2.0 is when they update the key fob. So I haven't had that experience yet, but I literally just changed the battery on the key fob about 3 or 4 days ago. So it's working great right now.
So you know about the NFC card on the door, right?
So I was just looking at the software roadmap that was published in that investor presentation. And by the way, you could still go to the Fisker website and pull up that presentation. The software roadmap is nowhere to be found in there. It's been pulled out. Luckily, you and I had used it before in other videos, so I have it on my hard drive. But if you went to that investor deck, somebody pulled it out of there. And that's one of the things that is indicated in there. And I can't remember if it was version 3.0. Yeah, version 3.0, where you're supposed to have the NFC card. But I think I've heard somewhere, either in the forums, maybe in one of your videos.
I believe the guy in the video. I believe the guy on the AMA that said you're never getting an NFC card. But your key fob is an NFC card. You just touch it. You don't have to press the button ever. So I just don't. You just touch it to your door handle and it unlocks it. You touch it to your door handle and it locks it. That's how I will never press any buttons on that thing ever again.
So will it ever be proximity? Meaning we get within, 5 feet and it just unlocks.
It's just a broken promise.
Well, that's part of my acceptance. I'm accepting the fact that, it may never become a scenario where I can leave that key fob at home and just, work with my phone, right? That's part of my acceptance at this point. So
Same. I agree. I think that this has been extremely insightful. Brian, thank you again for having me on the podcast. I'm gonna throw it to you to close it out, but I appreciate you very much. This was really helpful for me, and I hope the community as well.
Yeah, man, this has been great. It's been a while since you and I caught up, so it's been good to catch up. But thank you very much for watching. If you learned something, if you gained a new insight or found any of this interesting, please like, subscribe, definitely comment and share the video. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thank you.